Hello everybody, welcome back to American Textbook Reading. I'm Brian Stuart, and in this lesson we're taking a look at Science Book 4, Lesson 4. We're talking about the food chain. Is anybody hungry? Okay, well in this lesson we're going to discover what a food chain is. And we will also talk about the difference between prey and predator. Okay, let's get started. As usual, we start with the words, the vocabulary for this lesson, and the first word we have is producer. A producer is a living thing that makes its own food. So it can create or make its own food by itself. The opposite of a producer is a consumer. A consumer is a living thing that cannot make its own food. And that, of course, all animals are consumers, right? They need to find other things to eat. Predator. A predator is an animal that hunts and eats other animal. This is a good picture, right? So we can see a cheetah, and it looks like a wild hog or warthog. It's chasing. If it catches it, it will eat that hog. So the cheetah, of course, is a predator. It will hunt and eat other animals. Prey. Now, again, we say opposite, right? Producer, consumer, predator. The opposite of predator is prey. Prey is the animal that is hunted and eaten by another animal. In the previous picture, we saw a cheetah chasing a warthog. The cheetah was the predator, the warthog was the prey. In this picture, we see an owl. Owls are very strong predators. They're very fierce, and they're very, well, I almost said wise, but yeah, they're smart. They're very good hunters. And what are they eating? It looks like here, this is another bird. So they will eat birds, but they're also very famous for eating mice. And actually, many people like owls around because the owls will feed on the mice or the rats. You know, the mice will, get into places and eat a farmer's crops or all the food in the barn or something like that. And so it's good to have owls around to keep the population of mice and rats under control. So owl is a prey animal, and many different an owl is a predator animal, and the prey is what the owl eats. Prey is an animal that is hunted and eaten by another animal. In this picture, the smaller bird is the prey. So that's nature. Okay, next. Hunt. We already saw this word with the cheetah. We saw the cheetah chasing the warthog, right? In this case, we have a cheetah who has caught a gazelle or an antelope. And that's what cheetahs and predators do. They look for or chase an animal so as in order to eat it. So that's to hunt. And many animals hunt. People hunt too. When you have, especially where I grew up in the West, American West, many people in the fall will take their rifle, go out into the woods, and hopefully they'll shoot a deer or an elk. They get a permit for this, of course. It's all very legal, and you can't go out and just shoot a deer without a permit from the government, but they will hunt, and hunting is kind of a way of life, especially in nature. So to hunt. Of course, we hunt for different things now too, right? And if you're looking for a great pair of shoes or a nice outfit, you might go to the shopping mall and hunt for your perfect clothes. Okay, so we use it for other reasons as well. Food chain. Now, we talked about food chain. I said, well, what is a food chain? I mentioned that at the beginning of this lesson. A food chain is a line of living things that depend on other living things for food. So we talked about predator and prey, right? Prey, there's many types of prey and there's many types of predators. And usually the smaller or the weaker animal it is, that's lower on the food chain. The stronger and faster and bigger the animal, probably the higher up the food chain it is. So we have animals low on the food chain, and we have animals that are high on the food chain. Now this is an interesting picture. It's a cartoon, of course, and actually it's kind of a joke. Don't be confused by this picture because you can see something very strange here. And I noticed that on the cover picture. I mean, it's a cool picture, but it's just kind of funny because if you notice this right here, that is not an animal. That's kind of a joke. It's a fisherman's joke. Of course, the fisherman, it's a very interesting picture. This line here, of course, is a fishing line. On the hook, you see a worm. So a worm, of course, is very small and not very strong. It's a very weak animal. So it's on the bottom of the food chain. And then, of course, a fish will come and eat the worm, and then a bigger fish will come and eat the smaller fish. So the bigger fish are on the higher end of the food chain. But what in the world is this thing that I circled here? What is that? If you look closely, it looks like an old boot. And that's, like I said, it's a fisherman's joke. A lot, you know, when fishermen go fishing, you know, sometimes the only thing they catch are like old tires or pieces of clothes. In this case, sometimes fishermen they catch something, they, oh my gosh, I got a big fish, and they really work hard to pull it in, and it comes up and it's just an old boot. Okay, so that's kind of a joke or a fisherman's tale, and so the artist put this boot in here with a mouth going to eat the worm, and then the fish is going to eat the boot. So of course that's not real. That's just a kind of a fisherman's joke in the picture. And when you think about it, the animal that is on the top of this food chain is not in the picture. What do I mean? Well, here's the hook, right? Somebody put the worm on that hook, right? So the fish will come and eat that worm. Maybe a bigger fish will come and eat that fish. But who eats the big fish? Well, that's the fisherman. The fisherman is at the top of the food chain because they're going to catch. They're hunting the fish, and they're going to catch that fish and have it for dinner. Hopefully they won't eat the boot. Ugh, okay, okay, that's just a joke. Okay, next, caterpillar. A caterpillar is a small insect. I'm sure you've probably seen them out and about in your garden, in the woods, in the parks nearby your house, and they're colorful. Sometimes they're colorful. They have little, looks like hair sticking up out of them. The caterpillars, and they just kind of move along very slowly, and they eat leaves. They're not very pretty, are they? They're just kind of like a big worm with legs. But after a while, they will turn into a butterfly. They will change into a butterfly. They'll make a little cocoon, and after several days, that cocoon will open up, and it's the same animal, but it's a completely different, changed being. And it has wings, and it flies around. It's very pretty. Okay. Shark. A shark is a very large fish that has many teeth. And a shark is a predator because it has many teeth. It's very big. It's very powerful. And be careful when you go swim. Not everywhere. I mean, you don't really have to worry about sharks that often. Just in areas that do have sharks, be careful about that. Know where you're going if you're going to go to another country or go swimming on the beach. Just know if there's a shark warning or not. Most places, 99% beaches in the world, you don't have to worry. But some places you do. So just keep an eye out. Listen to the news or the local warnings. Okay, so that is a shark. Now let's talk a little bit more about the main ideas of this chapter. And of course, one of the main ideas is the food chain. Let's start on the right here, on the ocean, because that's easier. So, like I said, we have food chains. The smaller, weaker animals are on the bottom of the food chain, right? On the bottom. And at the top of the food chain, we have the animals that are at the top of the food chain. They are the ones, nothing eats them, right? They eat everything else. So a shark could be at the top of the food chain. And by the way, we call these animals apex. Apex means the peak or the top of something. Apex predator. And apex predator, we already talked about predator. Apex predator is the animal that sits at the top of the food chain. Sharks are at the top of the food chain in the ocean. Of course, people eat a lot of sharks, and it's actually kind of terrible what's going on in the world. People are overfishing sharks, and sharks might become extinct because, unfortunately, some people think it's great to eat shark fin soup. So they'll catch the shark, cut off the fin, and throw the rest of the shark in the ocean. It's a terrible waste, and it's illegal. So hopefully people will stop this practice. But, you know, usually in nature, sharks are apex predators and they eat everything down on the food chain. At the very bottom is plankton. Plankton, here down at the bottom, plankton are very small creatures that live in the water. And it's very interesting too because what eats plankton? Well, krill will eat the plankton. Krill are like little shrimp, and they're actually very pretty. I scuba dive. I used to scuba dive a lot, and they're very amazing little creatures on the coral, krill. And then, of course, what eats the krill? Fish, and then sharks will eat the fish. So this is kind of a good example of the food chain. But one thing that's very interesting is plankton. You know what else eats plankton? Whales. Blue whales. Blue whales are the biggest creature on Earth. And what do they eat? They eat the smallest creature on Earth, plankton. They have big mouths and they just go through the water and they just take in all the plankton, strain it through their mouths. And that's what they eat. You'd think a whale, well, it could eat anything. It eats the smallest creature in the world, skips all the other animals in between and just goes for the plankton. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so anyway, that's the ocean. On land, the food chain is we have plants, right? Plants or leaves, a leaf from a plant or grass, that's at the bottom of the food chain, though, right? Those are plants. Plants are usually at the bottom of the food chain. What eats the leaf? Well, the caterpillar will come along and eat the leaf. And then a bird will come along. Oh, there's a caterpillar. It will eat the caterpillar. And then a cat. The cat sees the bird. If the cat is lucky, it will catch the bird. Now, I wouldn't really call, I mean, this is kind of a funny picture. I really wouldn't call a house cat an apex predator, okay? But of course, house cats are domesticated. They're pets. You know, maybe a mountain lion or a lion or a cheetah. Those are apex predators, and they're the same family, the same cat family. So it's interesting. So, but anyway, these are two examples of food chains, one on land and one in the ocean. Okay. Another idea that we talked about already quite a bit is prey and predator. Now, again, we have a food chain here, and the food chain, the bottom of the food chain is on the left, and the top of the food chain is on the right. So first we have a plant, and the type of plant here is corn. So corn uses energy from the sun. The plant that grows corn uses energy from the sun to produce corn. And it is not prey, really. It's a plant. We don't really call plants prey. Prey are usually animals. So I wouldn't call plants prey. That's a little bit weird. But what eats the corn? A vole. What is a vole? A vole is a type of mouse, or, you know, in the same family as a rat. But rats have a bad reputation. Voles, mice have a little bit better reputation. They're cute or furry or whatever. But voles, mice, will eat the corn. And like I said, farmers don't like these types of mouse-like creatures, so they do like to have owls around that will eat the vole. But in this food chain, we're looking at the predator. What is the predator here? The coyote. Coyotes are very smart animals, and they will eat a lot of different things. And of course, they will eat the small mice that eats the corn, so they are a predator. The vole is not a predator. It does not eat other animals. It eats plants. But it is hunted by other animals like owls or coyotes, so they are prey, and the coyote is a predator. Now, the coyote is also prey to another animal, and that is the mountain lion. The mountain lion is the apex predator in many Western states. Nothing hunts a mountain lion. Any other animal would be crazy to try to hunt a mountain lion, because the mountain lions are strong, they're tough, they're big. You don't want to mess with a mountain lion. Okay, so the mountain lion may hunt and eat a coyote. Of course, mountain lions probably don't hunt coyotes that often. They will hunt other prey animals like rabbits or birds or things like that. Coyotes are a little bit difficult to catch, and of course coyotes can bite back, and they run in packs. So anyway, the mountain lion could catch a coyote and eat it. So it's a predator. It is an apex predator. Okay. Let's go over the reading passage together, and as usual, I'll read it out loud. You guys repeat after me, or in your mind, repeat after me, and focus on the pronunciation and also the words from the vocabulary section. Are you ready? Let's begin. Producers are living things that make their own food. Plants are producers. They make their own food using sunlight and nutrients. Consumers are living things that cannot make their own food. They eat plants or animals to live. All animals are consumers. Consumers need to find food. A food chain shows what eats what. A caterpillar eats a leaf. A bird eats the caterpillar. A cat eats the bird. This is just one food chain. There are food chains everywhere. A predator is an animal that hunts and eats prey. Prey is the animal that is hunted and eaten. In the ocean, one of the smallest prey is krill. Fish eat krill and sharks eat fish. This is one ocean food chain. The largest animal in the world is the blue whale. It is a predator. Blue whales eat krill. They also eat plankton. I think it's more common that they eat plankton. But anyway, they might eat krill as well if the krill is up off the bottom of the ocean. So, blue whales eat krill. It's interesting. The largest animal in the world eats the smallest animals in the world. So, interesting. Okay. How is the reading passage organized? In this case, we have main ideas and details. So we have the main idea of the passage, and we have details that support that main idea. Let's go over it. First of all, A, we have beep, right? We have a blank, are living things that cannot make their own food. So remember, all animals are this, right? What do animals do? They consume. So they are consumers. Consumers. Consumers are also, consumers we're talking about in nature. Consumers are living things that cannot make their own food. If we're talking about economics, consumers are people who go out and buy things, right? We're all consumers, whether we're in nature looking for food or whether we're in the shopping mall looking for something to buy, right? Consumers just go out and find something to get and to use for themselves, for their life. Okay, good. Next, we have another blank, beep, are living things that make their own food. So what is the opposite of consumers? Do you remember what we talked about in the vocabulary section? We said producers. Producers. So producers are living things that make their own food. If you make something, you produce it. So you are a producer. Next, we have a predator is an animal that beep and eats beep, okay? So it's interesting here because we need a verb here because we have a verb here, and it should be the same form of the verb, right? So what do predators do? We talked about this in the vocabulary section. A predator is an animal that hunts. Hunts, and we put S because singular subject. Predator, one predator, a predator, hunts and eats. What does a predator eat? Well, a predator, of course, what's the opposite of a predator? Is prey. So, our main sentence, living things find food in different ways. 3 different examples. 1, consumers. They're living things that cannot make their own food, so they need to hunt and get their food. They're predators. Producers are living things that make their own food. And coming back to the consumers, a predator is an animal that hunts and eats prey. So these are all different examples of how living things find food in different ways. Okay? Of course, we didn't talk about human beings. They go to the refrigerator to find food, and then they cook it, whatever they find in the refrigerator, for their meal. But that's a little bit different. Okay, we're talking about in nature. Okay, so interesting lesson. How do animals in the wild find their food? How do animals typically of course, we're talking about wild animals in nature. As human beings, we've changed nature a little bit to make this process a lot easier. But we're talking about in the wild, how do animals find and get food, and what are food chains. Now you have a pretty good idea of how this works in nature. Of course, in our lives, we kind of separate ourselves from nature, right? We just go to the supermarket and get what we want and then take it home, put it in a refrigerator, and then cook it. So it's a little bit different, obviously. But it's interesting, of course, we need to realize how it works in nature and how it has worked for millions and millions of years before we changed everything. Of course, we change things for the good. Whew, I'd rather live in a modern society than a primitive one, obviously. But anyway, interesting lesson. I hope you learned a lot of good words and also some good ideas. Thanks for studying with me, as always, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.